Welcome back to Game Time Discussions. I'm Emory. I'm sitting with Cameron Selby, and today we're going to go over our predictions for the 2024 NFL season. This is actually one of the shows that we really look forward to. We literally took a full grid of every single game that is going to be played this year. We predicted who was going to win every single week, and then we broke it down into the playoff picture and everything. So we have it all.
Yeah, win-loss record, tiebreakers, everything. We did this separately, no influence on one another's records, and then we put them all together, and we're going to compare and contrast. And then you can tell us where we're right, where we're wrong, and then you'll see all the way through our Super Bowl champions.
Yep, that is the plan. Let's get into it. As you can see on the board, we're going to start with the AFC East. Starting with the East, Cam and I actually have a very similar outlook on the East, except for I have a little bit more love for the Jets. I think my love for the Jets is the fact that I'm a big defensive guy, and by PFF, they are ranked first across the board for their defensive. Each level of defense, they are first at D-line, they're first at linebacker, they're first in the secondary, and that really gets me going. And then all they have to do, I feel like, is win. To win is score 20 points a game.
Yeah, so with the Jets, they have, other than starting the year at San Francisco, who is the most depleted roster, probably, or arguably the most depleted roster so far with all the skill players they have. Trent Williams is also still holding out. I know Brandon Ayuk is now resolved, but that is besides the point. That is not the more impactful, not departure, but absence. So it's a winnable game. I gave them the L week one. I'm not sure if you did.
Let's look. I got it right here.
That could be a big.
So for the Jets, week one, I have them winning the game.
Okay. Yeah. So, but either way, we're probably both going to have really strong starts because after that, it's really a lot of, fourth place projected teams: Tennessee, New England, Denver, Minnesota, all four projected last place in their divisions, and then a home game against Buffalo. And then essentially from there, they're in control of their own destiny to win the division. It just depends on if, they can hold off Buffalo, Miami, who, there's a reason that all of them are minus money to make the playoffs. And there's a reason that all of them are plus money to miss the playoffs. But yeah, everybody is pretty much in order in terms of division winner. We both picked the same spot on records with Buffalo, Miami, and New England. Very bad.
Yeah. We talked about this also, is like we care more about us feeling the same way about like ordering the teams the same way rather than it being like a one game difference. Like I have a 2-game difference. I have the Jets winning 2 more games than Cam, but like truly we have the same order by record on the board. Miami at 9-8, that's a little scary for a team that's trying to make the playoffs. 10-7 is probably what you need in the AFC. And we'll see if that follows for both of our records when we get to the AFC standings. So the next team, our next grouping is the AFC North, possibly the best division in football. On my side, we basically have the same thing, except for I'm higher on the Cleveland Browns. Cam is not. 10-7 versus 6-11. Cam, I don't even know. I think you just don't believe in their mental right now more so than anything.
I just have a problem with just trusting Deshaun at this point anymore. You can't. I think they caught lightning in the bottle. They had the number 1 scoring defense last year. Incredible, or not scoring defense, but yardage allowed.
Yes.
And that helped propel them through their 4 quarterback carousel that they ended up having. But I just can't. I'm done projecting that Deshaun's just going to play 17 games and finally just play well.
Fair enough.
I think this year they kind of took advantage of the fact that there were so many teams that just lost quarterbacks that were really good last year. And yes, they did too, and they did well. But it's not like there was a drop off in, well, now we can't really sling it anymore. We can't do what we got to do. They're a run identity oriented team, and Jerome Ford was admirable in his fill-in, and Joe Flacco is essentially what unlocked David Njoku and Amari Cooper for fantasy purposes. Like both those players, I would love them a lot more at their ADPs right now. If I've seen a just huge connection with either Njoku and Cooper to Deshaun, and Deshaun's already dealing with the shoulder again. Doesn't look like he's going to miss time, but I don't know. I'm over trying to project that they're just going to continue to overcome those kinds of things because they're not a typical franchise that can continuously overcome things. Pittsburgh's actually the one that they just somehow, in spite of every year, win 9 games.
Right.
This is if we're both correct, would be the first time in the Tomlin era, which spans 15 years, that they've had a losing record.
Mhm.
But it's barely, and that's despite the hardest strength of schedule you could ever see to end the season. And we both have them at 8-9, which I'm glad we kind of saw it the similar way. Like I said, with Cleveland, it's just a really tough stretch. I'd actually like to dive in a little bit more just to see head-to-head wise comparison, which you have
Yeah.
compared to me, because that's probably the biggest discrepancy on this entire prediction sheet.
One of the biggest. There's another team we'll talk about, but it's obviously in the AFC because someone else has to win, right? But yeah, so my thoughts on Cleveland is just like their defense is so good. They've been able to hold off. They've had a solid running game. I know Nick Chubb is going to be out for at least 4 weeks, but I feel like they don't need to score. I'm a big defensive guy. We talked about the Jets. I just don't think they need to score that many points to be good. Like you said, they had the lowest yards given up per game last year. Those types of things make it really hard on an offense on the other side to do anything really well. How did you see Dallas? We're going to go through the schedule.
That's such a hard game. That's something week 1 that I just don't want to touch at all from a betting perspective.
Right.
Cleveland's actually favored in that game, and so I'm not surprised, obviously, if they win. I ended up giving Dallas the win. But
I did too. I gave Dallas the win also.
Then
so maybe we should be on the...
But even before we even started recording, you did state with Cleveland, I have them beating a lot of good teams.
Yes.
So it's not like, I'm just giving them constant L's against New England and et cetera and so on. It's actually, they have the hardest division in football. They also have to play Kansas City and, Miami and all these teams. So that's just kind of what it came down to, is probably I just wasn't giving them the benefit of the doubt against those good teams. And you probably gave them more of those wins.
Yeah, I had them beating Jacksonville. And then they have a really easy stretch for the Giants, the Raiders, and Washington. But then they lost to Philly. They split the division. I had them splitting the division 3-3.
Yeah. That's pretty much what you got to do every year in the AFC North with every team.
I know, it's crazy. And then I had the Chargers. I had them beating the Chargers. I had them beating the Saints.
I actually had a loss against the Saints, Washington.
I had them losing to Denver.
Okay.
I had them losing to Denver.
I do as well.
KC, I had them beating KC.
All right.
I think that's a game that, we have to throw random wrenches in it. That's one of those wrenches that I think is good.
It's a game that I believe that is in the start of the 3-game stretch where Kansas City has 3 games in 10 days.
Yes.
So they're at home as well. It could be ugly weather because it's in the middle of December.
Yep.
Those are the kind of games that get weird and upsets happen. So.
And then I had them beating Miami in week 17. That is because of, I believe that's a home.
Yeah, that's a
home game in the cold. Miami can't play in the cold. So truly, I had them beating bad teams like New Orleans and the Raiders and Giants and Washington. And then I had them coming out on top on a couple big games that they had to win to get to that record where, it's a 4-game swing. If you have them losing both of those games, and then you're already almost to your 6-11 at that point. So
right. Yeah, I think with New Orleans, that was kind of one of those. And I know you don't love predicting like this. You kind of leave the records alone and you just kind of predict head to head and where you're playing the previous week. But with New Orleans, a lot of times it's vibes when you're trying to, get to a certain
point,
point or threshold of records. And we're both like very pessimistic on New Orleans, but I was just like, they don't have enough L's to where I know they'll be bad, but I don't think they'll be this bad at this point in the season.
Right.
And so that's why I think I ended up giving New Orleans the benefit of the doubt at home. I think right before their bye week. But again, Cleveland is off a bye playing that game. So I wouldn't be shocked
makes it tough.
if that did happen. But
yeah.
Cleveland's a tough one to do. Did you end up putting Cleveland into the postseason?
Yeah, I think they made it.
Okay.
I don't want to speak for sure.
We can be secretive and
Yeah, I think
cliffhanger.
I
That's fine.
definitely think they made it though. At 10-7, I think that's what you need to do in the AFC.
Well, I think I had one 10-17 miss,
Yeah,
so
exactly.
that's why I had to ask
Yeah.
myself. But yeah, we'll move on to the next division.
Let's see it. All right. So next up, the AFC South. This is one of those divisions that's a little crazy because the only team truly that's different is we have a difference in Houston versus Jacksonville. The Houston record, Cam has them at 11-6.
Wow.
I have them at 9-8. This is part of my bold predictions is what this is truly too. After I got done with the schedule, I still felt the same way. So it's a little different, but 10-7 Jacksonville is the same.
I really like the Jacksonville thing. I've said this before on multiple podcast episodes that we've done. Is just don't be surprised. I'm not going to pick them. It's not going to be a part of our 6-legger that we drove all the way
No
to Louisiana
confidence,
to
yeah.
do. But don't be surprised if they just come back and win 10 games. They did avoid a lot of elite opponents in the AFC, like the Ravens, the Bengals, essentially everybody outside their division.
Right.
They have a home game against the Jets, but it's in England. So there's a lot of breaks that go their way. And then on top of that, they get to spend 2 weeks in England, whereas everybody else is just they're there and then they got to play that weekend. So a lot of advantages to their schedule. A lot of the tough opponents, rather, outside of the division are at home. Not a ton of really, really rough stretches. And so that's why we both gave them 10-7. With Houston, that's going to be, I guess, a more polarizing picture because they're probably them and Green Bay are probably the most trendy picks of dark horses for both conferences.
Just wait.
And so, I mean, I think it's more likely than not that one of those two teams disappoints.
Right.
And
exactly.
I wouldn't be shocked if Houston did that way.
You actually have them.
It's not that crazy to think about.
Yeah, you actually have them making it. I hope. I mean, yeah, you had them winning the division. I kind of wonder what your differences are from mine because I think that Jacksonville has a really hard stretch to start the year. They go Miami, Cleveland, Buffalo, Houston, Indy, Chicago, and then of course New England, but then Green Bay, Philly. Those are tough games. I actually had them really coming on at the end of the year that saved their season more so than anything for me.
So with the chart, or I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. So with Jacksonville, yeah, that is their toughest stretch. You ideally want to have your toughest stretch at the beginning of the season.
Mm-hmm.
I actually had them because of how well their camp is going and how great Trevor looks. I am just really bullish on him finally showing like this is why I'm the number one pick. I understand that I've underwhelmed in terms of statistically, but I passed the eye test. I'm going to show it this year. I saw this interesting question on First Things First. What would you be more impressed by? Jacksonville winning the division, but him having another mediocre statistical season, or them missing the postseason, but he finally has that true 35 touchdown, 11 interception, 4,500 yard season? What do you think would be more impressive in the public's eyes for him?
Probably the season for the public. I would think so because
I agree too.
It doesn't make sense, but that's how it goes. I mean, we kind of awed on like guys like Anthony Richardson who played 2.5 games basically. We got on CJ Stroud, great football player. Don't get me wrong, but they went 9-8 last year, and so it's not like they did something insane. But his performance was what really did it, I think, over the fact that they won a bunch of games.
Yeah, I think Houston ended up 10-7, but basically, okay. Every team in that division kind of fell apart towards the end. Both Jacksonville and Indy weren't playing with their quarterback at the waning stretches. Indy is, I mean, we have the last two in the same order. Tennessee spot on. Indy, the problem with me is I'm pessimistic about them, but there's just so many just pick 'em coin flip games. And so that's why I just kind of had to, put them at 9-8. But I would rather be in the park of being more pessimistic, picking the under, because I think their win total is 8.5.
Yeah.
So being where you're at 7-10, if I went back and I'm manipulating my predictions, but I just went with a gut, don't touch it until we record, that's kind of where I ended up having them at 9-8. But really, there's just no stretch that's just like this is a true gauntlet.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no more than back-to-back games. Everybody's just like Miami's of the world, Pittsburgh's. This entire division, they're probably going to go 3-3 at Green Bay, but it's
Chicago.
in September. Chicago, not
Pittsburgh,
that tough.
yeah.
Like there's no just strong pencil in L's.
Right.
Or pen put to ink to paper
Well, I
L's.
think
So it's
yeah.
just kind of like, probably have some wins here, probably have some losses there, and that's just kind of where I ended up putting them at 9-8. But I would rather be in your ballpark, which is just completely punting on them and being, under the field.
Yeah, so I think the reason that they kind of ended up where I'm at is because of the stretches of games. So, first 4 games or 5 games is Houston, Green Bay, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Jacksonville. And then they have a Tennessee, whatever. Then they play Miami, Houston. But then if you look 10 through 12, it's like a tough little go.
Yeah, that's a tough main stretch. It's got Buffalo at the Jets and then home against Detroit.
Yeah.
But 2 are at home.
Yeah.
And then at New England, obviously, before their bye. And then their last, stretch to end the season is at Denver, Tennessee, at Giants. 3 teams projected to be 4th in their division. And then home against Jacksonville, which, Jacksonville, they typically play up against.
Yeah. 3-3,
so,
right? In the division, you said?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'd like I said, I'd rather be in your ballpark. If I could go back and just manipulate, I probably would find ways to make them that way. I actually had them 2-4 to start the season, and then they just kind of win-lost after a couple of straight wins to get back to 500. So that's just where I have them. But yeah, that was an interesting division to talk about for sure.
Yeah, and then we'll go to the next one. It is the AFC West, and we both see Kansas City as the best team. We actually have them in order by record, which is good. We have 2 teams that are the same, and then the Chargers, 10-7 for the Chargers for Cam, and then 8-9 for me. I guess that's our biggest difference, but not really too far apart.
This division's exactly. It's one of the easier divisions in my opinion to predict.
Mm-hmm.
The Raiders just kind of really good defense, good in the front, in the trenches on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
They'll probably work their way into 6 or 7 wins, but it's clearly a team that is depleted in all the important spots. And with Denver, great offseason. And I think we're both bullish on just the fact that this team is going to be better than most people think.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Denver at 5.5 is the most bet over on the entire board right now in Vegas. People are starting to catch on because of the Bo Nix hype with the preseason, what he did. Kansas City, easy chalk to win the division unless Mahomes goes down. Knock on wood that does not happen. With the Chargers, biggest difference, 2 games, that is pretty significant in the AFC. I actually they were the first team out in my playoff grid. But so we both have them missing.
Yeah.
They lost the 4th tiebreaker, so to speak, with that we had to go all the way down for that to put out. But my main thing is just I am very optimistic on Jim Harbaugh just stepping in and just finally getting the most out of the talent that they have. And I know it's kind of spotty in certain areas, but they have underwhelmed for multiple years in a row from the talent that they have on paper.
Absolutely.
And this year, I think, is the time where they kind of flip that, where on paper they've kind of dwindled. But now that they have a better coaching and scheme in there, that they'll outperform expectation. And right now, I think their win total is like basically 9, and we're just kind of straddling both ends of that. But they're a tough team, but I think they'll be beating a lot of teams that you wouldn't be shocked. I guess one of the big differences, I'm assuming you had them getting swept by Kansas City?
No, I had them beating Kansas City once.
So, okay.
At
so
home.
That was one I was wondering about early in the season if you were going to give them a win. But
I had them losing to Pittsburgh. I had them losing to Denver. I had them losing to Arizona, Cleveland, Tennessee.
Okay, I have a win against Tennessee.
Baltimore, they lost. But did you have Cincinnati beating them?
No.
So they beat Cincinnati.
Yes.
I had them beating Cincinnati. I had them losing to Atlanta.
Okay, so mm, Atlanta and Arizona are the two. No, not Arizona. Atlanta and Tennessee are the two
Difference.
differences. Which, again, let me pull up their schedule really quick. So Arizona at Arizona, following it at Denver, and it's on Monday night. So very true pick 'em, and Arizona might be favored in that one. We'll see how well they turn out, because they're another team that we're bullish on, of just kind of outperforming expectations. Chargers are at home, and that's a true, they'll be favored, but sometimes you just got to pick dogs
Yep.
in certain spots.
Random dogs, and that was one of my random dogs for the show. But yeah, so I think this division was pretty easy, just for like top and bottom how we saw it, except for a couple games here. You have Kansas City winning 13. I'm guessing that's probably first in the AFC.
Yes.
That's a lot of games to win.
Yeah, I actually had them 13-3 going to the final week, and they're traditional rest.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
Denver gets nod to get to 7 wins.
Gotcha. All right, so we'll go to the NFC now. Let's look at the NFC East. Cameron has Dallas going 9-8. I don't know if that makes the playoffs or not. We'll talk about that in a little while. But I have them at 10-7. It's a worse division or worse conference. 10-7 will probably get you in the NFC no matter what. I think this year.
So similar. I love it. This is the fourth out of 5 divisions.
We did not talk about this, guys.
Yeah.
This
is the 4th out of 5 divisions that we have the entire order the same.
Yeah.
Some involved the tiebreaker. One was just a trendy, that we both are on board for swap with the Jacksonville one, but this one again spot on with Dallas. This is the obvious talking point, because now their 10.5 was bet down so much that Vegas flipped it to 9.5 is now the new total for them, which they don't do that late in the season typically. But now 9.5 is the total, and again we're straddling both sides of that. If you looked at our bowl predictions video, my last one was Dallas loses the final 2 weeks of the season and misses the playoffs. Well, I kept it that way to miss or lose the final 2 games of the season, because I see them splitting with Philly and I see them splitting with Washington. We'll see if they end up missing the
absolutely
playoffs as well.
9-8. Yeah, for sure.
The Giants going to be one of the worst teams in football. It doesn't really matter. They're going to have a top 5 pick.
Yeah.
In some way, shape, or form. 3 wins versus 4 wins doesn't really matter. They're going to be targeting a quarterback. Out of all the teams that are going to be the worst, they're probably the most trendy team to put whoever's QB1 on the draft board.
Yeah, not New England, right? Because we have them actually. I have them worse overall record. They would be the number 1 overall pick. I'm not sure that you did that.
And they will get an absolute haul for doing that. I think I had the Giants as the worst record.
Okay, well then they will get whoever the number 1 quarterback is. We'll see who that is. There's a lot of quarterbacks in this class that are not necessarily day 1 guys, and we'll see if that changes.
And this is a really strong defensive class too, and certain teams will need that, and certain teams are going to benefit by being able to trade out, like New England, to get an identity back. That's why you need to preach patience. Don't play Drake May a snap. Just quick tangent on that, just because people are like, what does Jacoby Brissett deserve? You're going to ruin him. I promise you. With
it's not worth it.
Let
them get older.
Eat your bad season. Take a trick out of the San Antonio Spurs book. Bad season, tank, get your guy, and then build around him.
Yeah.
And don't force trade for this 32-year-old all-star. Blah, blah, blah. Quick tangent on that. Anyways, Washington, another, same pick, 7-10. I think another kind of somewhat bold take. I think Washington is the second most likely team to win the division. I don't think it's Dallas. I think Dallas can finish second, but if I had to pick a team to win the division and it's not Philly, I would go with Washington.
It's a fun offense. They have a fun team.
Yeah.
I mean, their defense is a little scary. I mean, that's my biggest thing is I don't see them being able to hold anybody under 24 points, but
I actually do. I think that Washington, it's going to be below average in terms of giving up stuff, but sometimes you just got to have the right coaching scheme. And with Dan Quinn, the biggest thing with Dan Quinn, it's not about holding people under a certain amount of points. It's about creating turnovers and
Mhm.
opportunities. Dallas was always one of the worst teams at getting takeaways and the minus turnover differential. And as soon as he comes, number one in takeaways, and I believe last year again they were top 3. Deron Bland, most pick sixes, all those kinds of things. That is the identity that his defense kind of brings. He allows yards, he allows points, but it's just situational defensive scheme is kind of where he thrives. And so that's why I think Bobby Wagner now as the kind of anchor of that defense kind of helps with that, is that you have that leadership mentality to, you know, enact those kinds
Yeah,
of
they made the
schemes.
most moves.
It's a
You know,
completely new team.
yeah,
Their offensive line is still awful,
yes,
but they have a quarterback that can kind of
fix that. Yeah,
fix that
I
a little
agree.
bit. So yeah, we both have them at 7 and 10. That's kind of right where their win total is. But just don't be shocked if they outperform that and then outperform Dallas as a result.
Right, for sure. And then the other team in here, we have Philly winning the division. I don't think that should come as a big surprise. They have the best roster top to bottom, in my opinion.
I think Philly was one of the easiest schedules that I didn't really have any I don't know
Yeah,
what to do with.
right, exactly.
There's obviously a couple games, but most of their home games are pretty easy. Their hardest outside of division home game is what you can debate Jacksonville or Cleveland. Green Bay is in Brazil, and they're
Right.
1.5 favored, but I think that that's my strongest play of the week
Yes,
of
that's
week 1.
I don't have as much faith in
But I
Green
mean,
Bay.
they have Atlanta Monday Night Football against their Kirk Cousins early in the season. That's just one of the easiest home schedules, and then on the road, you got at New Orleans, at Tampa Bay, the Giants, Cincinnati. I believe probably both of us gave a no there. At Baltimore later, the Rams, which is somewhat of a neutral site game, but it's on the road. That'll be a huge division or a tiebreaker game. Yeah, that's their schedule. It's one of the easiest ones to click on and just be like, this is 11 or 12 wins.
Yep.
They're going to win the East. It's one of my strongest bets. It is in my 6-legger division parlay.
Yep.
Yeah, I think this division is pretty straightforward.
Yep. And then let's go to the next one. Maybe. Where's my thing? There it is. Let's go on to the next one. The NFC North.
Yeah.
We saw this pretty similar. I don't really like that we're so similar, actually, because like people are gonna be like collusion. No, there's no collusion. We actually did this separately. I have a full sheet. If you want it, I will send it to you. I don't care. We've done it. I promise. But yeah, this is what we think of the NFC North. I don't have anything else to say. Like, Detroit's the best. We think Chicago is gonna be a playoff team, and Green Bay might miss it 9-8. We'll see.
Similar to, I will say, and we've been pumping up Chicago all season or summer long, and people are very pessimistic of like wait and see with Caleb, and they're not willing to just put him over the top. I'm not willing to go as far as Nick Wright on First Things First goes, where he puts them as the NFC representative in the Super Bowl. Again, there has never been a number 1 overall pick as a quarterback to win a playoff game ever. That was part of my bold prediction again, where he sets all kinds of franchise records and is the first to do that. We'll see if he did the second or that playoff win part. Again, 10 wins is really easy to find on this schedule. It's a 4th place schedule. There's a lot of last place teams they get to face. They're going to split the division. And even if you're like, oh, they're not as good as Detroit, every year they outplay Detroit.
I mean, it's still a rivalry
2 years ago, when Detroit missed the playoffs at 8-9, they swept them. Last year, they should have swept them. And there was a 4th quarter comeback of, I believe it was a 17-point game that Detroit came back to win one. And then Chicago dominated the other one. So don't think, even though we have Detroit as 13-4, probably the 1 seed. I'm not sure if in the last division has somebody higher than that. But it's really easy to just say, give them 3 to 4 division wins.
Right.
And then, their schedule is just very easy. They have really strong stretches.
That's why they win 10 games.
And that's why they win 10 games.
I mean, but then, and Green Bay kind of has, a tougher schedule, and that makes it why they are 9-8. Playing Philly week 1, I gave them a loss, but then I had them winning the next 3 games. Play the Rams. I think that's a tough game. I think that Rams game is a tough game. But like Jacksonville, Detroit twice, Chicago twice, San Francisco, Miami,
Miami on a short week.
Seattle, who we think is probably a little bit better and a little bit annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just Indy, you could give them that loss if you were like, here, Indy's better. You gave them more wins. You could have gave them the Indy game because that's a 50-50, like you said, with a lot of the Indy games.
And then with that last, I know we've brought it up before on another podcast episode, but we've talked about wouldn't be crazy the last week of the season being this is the win or go home game with Chicago versus Green Bay. I know Green Bay's at home. Did you end up giving Chicago the win there?
Let's see. No, I gave them the loss.
Okay. I actually gave Chicago the win.
Okay.
So
well, that's what predicted your schedule, and somehow we still came out at the same. I actually gave them a loss, though. No, yeah.
Gotcha. Well, did you give them?
Oh no, sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Chicago won that game.
Okay. Yep. Well, yeah. There you have it.
That's how it went.
Yeah. Green Bay optimists rejoice again. Houston and Green Bay are the 2 trendiest dark horse picks, and I don't think both will come true. I think one will underwhelm, and I think Green Bay is as talented as a lot of teams, and they probably are one of the top 7 teams in the NFC. But that's not how records and predictions work. You can't just say the easiest top 7 teams and just put them all
They're
in.
all going to the playoffs. Yeah, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't work that way. You got to have 5 to 7 new playoff teams every year. It's not going to work that way. And last year, I know they finished strong. They were still 9-8. So I know they had some improvements in some areas, but they didn't really improve enough to where it's just like, let's give them 11 wins and figure it out. There's some people that have them over Detroit as division winners, and I just don't see a way that happens.
Detroit is by far the most solid team everywhere you look. In the NFL. In the NFL, yeah. Not
just this division.
That's why they're 13-4.
One of the hardest.
That's why they're 13-4, because they are built all the way around, top to bottom. They don't have any weaknesses except for maybe wide receiver 2. Is that it? On the whole team, because they went and addressed their defensive weaknesses with 4 DBs. I just don't think that Green Bay can outplay them.
Yeah, and then with Minnesota, it's probably to their benefit if they end up having a rough season. Obviously, JJ's already out for the year. It's just kind of a tweener year to begin with. Nobody's job is not safe. Kevin O'Connell, if he doesn't have a good season, is not going to be fired. That would be terrible. Terrible move. It's mainly just, let's get through the year. Let's be competitive. But it's just kind of a year transition. They have a first-round pick next year. And I believe through the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th round, they don't have a draft pick. So they're going to be a trendy team for us moving back next year. And if they're able to secure a top 7 pick in a strong defensive class, or somebody's desperate enough, the Raiders, to get Shadur Sanders, that seems like a trendy pairing. They're going to get a haul for that and kind of regenerate some of that draft capital that they lost when they moved up for Dallas Turner and all these moves that they made.
Right. So yeah, we kind of see the North the exact same way.
Let's see if we feel the West is the same way.
Is it the West next?
Or South is next.
South is next.
What?
We kind of feel the South the same way. I mean, they're in order. So yeah, I guess we have the same idea of what's going to happen in the South. I have Carolina being better than New Orleans, and I don't know that that's going to be a team that most people expect to feel that way about. But they have an easy schedule, and they got better, and New Orleans got worse. So
yeah. So what I'll say, kind of the opposite end of the spectrum with my Indy prediction, where I gave them 9-8, and I was like, I actually feel better about Emory's prediction at 7-10. Carolina, I think I'm more optimistic than a 5-win team. I think I'm probably a little underweight to their win total. They have one of the easiest strength of schedules this entire division does, so we might be underweight on everybody. Atlanta, we ended up both giving I was wondering if, because Atlanta being a trendy pick, I know that wasn't sitting well with you, and you were kind of flirting with the idea of maybe even leaving them out altogether. Came close, but I have them running away by default, and I don't know who I gave the tiebreaker to with Carolina, New Orleans, but they're both not going to be great, but New Orleans, I think, is trending in the wrong direction, whereas Carolina is actually trending in the right direction. So that's why I think 6 wins is very realistic for this team. Maybe even 7, depending on how well Bryce Young develops.
Yeah, I saw New Orleans as a bottom 3 team. I talked about that on my bold predictions. I've got them 5 wins, and that's going to be bottom 3. We haven't
really?
gotten there yet. So
you rarely see, a 5-win team be that low,
right.
But also, it's kind of hard to just predict a 3-14 or 4-13 for.
I have a 2-15, but it's New England's.
Exactly.
Right. Like that one's the one I was like comfortable with. I think the Giants were my second worst with 4.
Yeah, which we're right on par with that.
Yeah.
I actually don't remember who was my third lowest.
We'll check it out in a
we'll,
minute.
We'll check in a little bit.
But yeah, so this is the NFC South. We kind of feel the same way. I mean, Atlanta is going to win the division by default. They have the best team, like just roster wise.
They're sneakily well balanced.
Yeah, Tampa Bay is actually though a team that I think could spoil some parlays.
Yeah.
And so I'd be a little bit nervous about them. But yeah, I don't see them currently. Do not see them winning the division. But if you look at Atlanta's schedule, like they have a tough schedule to start, and so that's my thing.
Yeah,
like they could get out really, really rough, playing Pittsburgh first, Philly, KC, but then
you got 3 straight division games.
Yeah, they got to. If they beat Tampa Bay, I think it's a wrap, basically, in my opinion. And then they play Dallas, they play Seattle, teams that are a little
pretty
difficult.
Much teams that are better. We didn't really give them the benefit of the doubt.
Right.
I wonder what the one difference is, but it's probably because I actually had them splitting with Carolina.
I haven't splitting. Yes, I have splitting Carolina actually.
Dallas is an L. I gave the.
I had them beating Pittsburgh.
Yes, I did as well.
Losing to Philly, losing to KC, and then Seattle, I had them beating.
Same.
Dallas, I had them losing to. I had them losing to Denver and the Chargers. And the Raiders. And the Raiders.
I listen to the Raiders as well. So Denver is the one difference. Let me pull that up because that one is in week 11. That's coming off in basically 3 out of 4. It'll be their 3rd out of 4 on the road, right after a game against New Orleans. And then Denver, I think, is off a stretch where, well, they're actually coming off back-to-back games against Baltimore and Kansas City on the road. So
they get to go home.
That's a tough one. That'll be a pick 'em, even though their records won't be the same.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, we kind of feel the same way, though, about the NFC South. I need to not feel the same way here in a second because we can't keep trending like that. Right here we go.
Yep.
Oh, that says AFC East. Disregard, everybody. This is the NFC West. I'm not sure how that got up there, but that's okay. But yeah, this is a division where
nothing much to say. That's 7 out of 8 where we have the exact same order.
Yeah, and I think it might. Some of them are chalky, some of them are not. Some of them we just have like feelings. We've been talking about it for a lot. We've convinced each other to believe the same way a little bit. But like here, you look at this, like Arizona.
Well, actually, I mean, now that I think about it, you have a 10-7, 10-7. So we'll see what the tiebreaker is.
There is a tiebreaker in this division, which is fun. I have it here. We'll talk about it on our next little segment, though. But yeah, so this is the NFC West. I apologize. That is on me. Here, it's just kind of a bunch of teams that are good, and I don't know that anybody's great right now. Is my thing. Like that's why I think San Francisco's 10-7. Like they just have so many issues internally that are going on. I think Trent Williams is by far the biggest piece. If they can't get that figured out, they are going to possibly be 9-8 because he is a massive piece. I don't care what anybody says about tackles versus other positions. Like he is the most important position right now.
It's weird. Like I don't consider this one of the top 2 toughest divisions. I would give that to both the AFC and NFC Norths.
Yes.
But whoever is 4th place in this team, whether that be Arizona, Seattle, you actually have them with the same record. I gave Arizona the benefit of the doubt to get to 8 wins.
Right.
Whoever it is, I think is the best 4th place team in the NFL.
Yes.
They're just kind of caught in, a rough division that.
This is a very competitive division. Maybe not the best overall talent wise, but the competitive.
So last year where the AFC North finished all with the winning records and stuff like that, which that never happens. I if there was a team that you asked me, or a division, which division is most likely that all teams flirt with either 500 or having above 500 records, I think it would be the NFC West.
Right.
Because all of them, their schedules are reasonable. I think everybody kind of made improvements. The only thing with Seattle, brand new coaching staff for the first time ever, and a lot of it without NFL experience for the most part.
Right.
So, and then with Arizona, they've got Kyler back. And I just believe that Kyler, this is his year to fully return to being a top 10 quarterback. And then the Rams were pretty much spot on 10-7. And then San Fran, they're the most injured team, like we said. Super Bowl hangovers are a real thing, especially in the NFC. We've seen multiple times, especially Atlanta in their comeback, biggest comeback in Super Bowl history against New England. They missed the playoffs the following year. Philly, winning the Super Bowl for the first time ever, missed the playoffs the following year. So don't be surprised that if San Fran flirts with that. I couldn't find more than 7 losses. I actually gave them 6. But there's a reason that they're heavily bet on the under right now.
I think for San Francisco, it's all about their first 8 games, because when you look at their schedule, like, that's probably the easier side of their schedule. They have a week 9 bye. I had them losing to the Jets in week 1, but then they beat Minnesota. They lose to the Rams, in my opinion. They beat New England. They beat Arizona. Place them in division games. Lose to Seattle, KC, Dallas, and then go to the bye. And if they haven't got it figured out by then, I feel like they're possibly, going to be the team that we see out of the.
So I actually had them as 6-2 at the bye.
I have them.
So
1, 2.
That actually would be a good sign for them to perform that well.
Mm-hmm.
However, it is well known that San Fran has kind of had middle of the season lulls. Last year, they lost 3 straight games after starting 3-0, and then they were 3-3, and they thought the sky was falling. And then they just ran 10 straight.
Yes.
Like, they have their stretches in the middle of the season where they get banged up or whatever. This year, it's a little different because those injuries are already happening, or the holdouts are happening, what have you. But yeah, don't be shocked that if the Rams were to pass them and win the division themselves, I don't think that they're as talented as San Fran. I just think that it's more set up for them to succeed. But I had a 6-leg division parlay that we placed when we went to Louisiana. This division was not a part of it. That's why I have a lot of concerns about San Fran, winning this division. M does too. That's why he has a tiebreaker that we're about to talk about.
Yep. And so, talking about the tiebreak. Oh, no, not this one. It'll be the AFC first.
Okay.
Looking at my AFC predictions, this is kind of how it all shook out. Houston does not get in. That is my first prediction. I only have 9 and 8 teams not making it. But yeah, Cincy is the number 1 seed. That tiebreaker. Hold on, let me get that up. I apologize. Cincinnati versus KC was a head-to-head. That's why Cincinnati's above KC. And then for the second place spot, KC versus the Jets, the conference wins is why the Kansas City Chiefs are above the Jets. So those 2 teams, why they tied, and that's why they're 2-3. And then for the next grouping, Jacksonville obviously gets in because they win the division, so they're 4. And then if you look at the 6-7 grouping, it's Cleveland and Buffalo. I have Cleveland making the playoffs at 10-7, unlike Kam, who has them at 6-11. And that is better record in common games. I had I had the in common games. Buffalo was 1-4, while Cleveland was 4-1. It was a pretty easy calculation for those groupings. So
yeah, I like it. You have, like I said, you want to have 5 to 7 new playoff teams. You have 3 new playoff teams this year in Cincinnati, the Jets, and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Very nice. We'll see what ends up happening with the NFC following you, unless we're going to go AFC.
It's AFC.
Okay.
It's you.
So yeah, we'll go with me. This is going to be run through Kansas City. They are just set up really well to just get that bye if they stay healthy enough to do so. Cincinnati have the same level of bullishness on them. Same record, 12-5. They just miss out, or not just miss out, but they
Of the first
get pretty
overall.
close. They're the closest contender in my eyes to get the 1 seed, as long as they can get through that division relatively unscathed. Houston went into the division at 11-6. The Jets at 10-7. My tiebreaker was the 3-way tie. So you see Buffalo, Jacksonville, the Chargers, 10-win team missing the playoffs. That's kind of how I view it. With 2 9-win teams also missing the playoffs.
Right.
That was kind of one of the big differentiators. Is that my contender list there's going to be a big laundry list of teams and if-then statements in Week 18
Right.
in my prediction. But with Buffalo, Jacksonville, Chargers, first tiebreaker is head-to-head record. Only Jacksonville and Buffalo play each other, but Buffalo gets it at home on a Monday night game in Week 3, in between Jacksonville's roughest stretch. So I gave Jacksonville the L there. That's why Buffalo gets it. Jacksonville, Chargers, and Chargers, Bills don't play each other. And then with the Chargers versus the Jags, we had to go all the way to the 4th tiebreaker, which is common conference record. Jacksonville gave them 7-5. Chargers gave them 6-6. So that's why the Chargers miss out. Makes me really nervous because I'm very optimistic that the Chargers can make the playoffs this year. However, we'll just kind of see what happens. I think Jacksonville being in both of our playoff pictures is going to be not controversial, but very against the public because people are very pessimistic on them, and I just am not in that boat right now.
I have a question. Who did you have winning the KC Cincinnati game? Because I think because obviously that was big.
So I actually gave Kansas City that game.
So I have Cincinnati winning that one. It's obviously you have an extra win somewhere for Kansas City, but that kind of, or actually no, we probably have the same schedule. You have an extra win for Cincinnati somewhere because so yeah, that makes sense. I just I feel like that game is going to tell us a lot. And guess what? That game's in week 2.
I really wish it wasn't week 2.
I know. So put it in week 11,
when,
something like that.
Obviously,
later.
You to have your season opener as an elite matchup, whether that was going to be Cincinnati and Kansas City or Baltimore, Kansas City, who was the most recent AFC Championship game. But typically, when you have tiebreaker games, you want to sell that the final couple weeks. Obviously, the last week of the season, everybody plays somebody in their own division. That's been the way it has been for about 10 years now. But week 17, there's a slate of games where it's just like, this is huge. Kansas City plays Pittsburgh. Cincinnati plays Denver. I really think they could have
done a little bit better there.
Done better there. But again, there's a lot of if-then.
The other way.
And you got to swap it.
Yeah. Cincinnati plays Pittsburgh. KC plays
I just
Denver,
hate when it's like this comes down to what happened in September.
For sure.
4 months later, teams are very, very different.
Well, I will say also, Hollywood Brown's out for KC. We know that. He'll be out probably through that Cincinnati game. But most of all, too, KC plays Baltimore on Thursday night, first game of the year, this Thursday. And Cincinnati plays New England on Sunday. And I just feel like a tune-up game. It feels like an Alabama tune-up game for Cincinnati before they go and play the, big teams.
Right.
And so I kind of feel like that's a little why I'm kind of on that.
My also thing is that with Cincinnati, they have been a team in the Joe Burrow era to struggle the first 5-6 weeks of the season. They're usually 500 or just under it. And then even their Super Bowl season, I believe they started out 3-3. And then just kind of turned it on.
Right.
Even last year, I know it was an injury, but just completely shit in the bed against Cleveland to start. And then, it was just rough. And then they started trending up and then obviously fell out from under them with Joe Burrow going down. So I just couldn't give them, because I have them winning 4 of the first 5. I couldn't give them 5-0. And that is strictly why I ended up giving Kansas City the win in week 2.
I gave them 5-0.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't be shocked. But again, it's just kind of some teams you can kind of pick trends on how they typically start. Andy Reid doesn't lose in September. Baltimore typically starts out well, those kinds of teams. And then there's certain teams that, they usually struggle after the bye. They struggle late in the year.
Right.
Dallas had 10-year stretch where they just couldn't win in December against good teams. That kind of thing. Miami can't play in the cold. Those kinds of things that you can kind of implement in your predictions, and that's kind of how I had it the way they do.
Fair enough. So then we'll jump over to the NFC. I'll show you my stuff. So on the NFC side, Detroit's number 1 for both of us, I believe. So that's locked up. And then I have the 3 division winners. Atlanta gets in at 9-8 as the division winner. San Francisco does win that tiebreaker. Let me grab that. San Francisco was versus the Rams was a conference win. More conference wins. So that's why they won out. I believe they had 8 and 7 basically. And then for Dallas versus the Rams, Dallas actually gets the 5th because of the tiebreakers. So they got very lucky because in common games, the common games are Detroit, San Francisco, Philly, and New Orleans. Those are some games. The biggest difference was New Orleans was a win for both teams. I had Dallas splitting with Philly, and I had the Rams losing. And then I had San Francisco splitting with the Rams, and then Dallas losing. So it all came down to Detroit. I have Dallas beating Detroit. And I think that is probably going to be uncommon that week, but I can't remember why.
I don't know if it will be. It's because
there was a reason behind like my thought process. Let me go grab the schedule for Dallas while you
so
check it out.
There's not really much that I just have an issue or complain about. NFC, we were even more similar, and we'll look at mine in a second. But Detroit being the 1, have that. Philly being the 2, have that. San Fran being the 3, have that. Actually, I think I have Philly and San Francisco flipped. And then obviously the South winner, the Falcons, being the 4th seed. A couple of win-loss records, slightly different. And you'll see some of my wildcard tiebreakers and who makes it in shortly.
Yeah, so the reason I had that was actually because last year, remember the game, Detroit and Dallas, that whole thing? Yeah, so I actually think that this year Dallas wins by 2 touchdowns. And I think they just say it was not controversial, put a stamp on it.
Detroit, even last year during the breakout year, they had games where they just shit the bed again. They got blown out by Chicago on Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
At home.
That was
They just
crazy.
were down 21-0 to Green Bay in the first half. Those kinds of things. And so even if we both have them as the 1 seed or 13 wins or 12 wins, whatever you want to even put them, they're a team capable of just dropping some because that's just kind of how they operate.
Right.
And you're a team that just goes for every 4th down and goes for touchdowns. And sometimes the ball's not going to bounce your way. You saw that in the NFC Championship game last year, and had they kicked that field goal, I can almost guarantee that would have been a different result because San Fran was just on their heels and they had no momentum, and that was the momentum that they needed. And then they immediately had a off the head Hail Mary catch by Brandon Ayuk, and that's just kind of what started everything. And that would not have happened if it's one thing if you're like, we're up 5,
right?
This puts us up 14 versus 17.
Yeah.
On the road against a team that is down, being up 3 touchdowns is the biggest priority in that situation. 3 so I love Dan Campbell. We both do. That was absolutely the wrong decision, and it, in my eyes, cost him that game.
So it's always the wrong decision. Not if it works, it's the right decision. And I think that gets construed. I'm a big believer in you make the right decision and then no matter what. And yes, Dan Campbell has made decisions that we believe are wrong and then they worked before in the past. That's still the wrong decision. Like, let's just analytically, it's still the wrong decision.
And I'm an advocate for go with what got you there. So if that's the mentality that you want to do, cool. But sometimes as a coach, you have to get away from that in situations. And that is one of the few situations where it's just like you have to
get away. Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Punt when you need to punt in those situations. There's no. I remember a game last year where they called a Penei Sewell pass to win the game because they needed a first down and it was a 1-possession game.
It worked.
And it worked. And it's awesome. I'm all for those. When you're up 14 again in the 4th quarter, you need
3 scores. Touchdowns. 3 scores. Like that is huge. It doesn't matter like what you think. Like that is everything. So I completely agree. And then I was gonna say that the last head-to-head I had on here was the Rams in Chicago. That head-to-head was I'm sorry, that game was a head-to-head where the Rams won. So that's why Chicago is the 7th seed. And then Cam's, let's go check it out.
Yeah, so
we're 9-8 team playoffs.
We have, which that's been somewhat common for the NFC of late. The biggest thing is we have all 7 playoff teams the same.
And the other one we had all 6. We had 6 out of the 7. I didn't have Houston.
Yes,
that was the only difference.
Yeah, 13 out of 14 playoff teams the same. And this one, again, Philly and San Fran are swapped based on record. Atlanta's still the 4 seed. Chicago and the Rams, tiebreaker, head-to-head.
Head-to-head, okay.
Gave Chicago the win. Then they move on. Then Dallas versus Green Bay. It was down to the division, and Dallas gets the benefit of sweeping the Giants, and Green Bay gets the unfortunate benefit of having to go 3-3 against a tough division.
Yeah.
Whereas, I think they actually were swept by one of the teams, because I don't think I gave them
Detroit.
Let me see. So,
well, you said that Chicago won last week.
Chicago.
So
I had them getting swept by Chicago.
Wow.
And that's what put them at 3-3. So sweeping Minnesota, getting swept by Chicago, and that is what knocks them out of the playoffs.
Wow. Caleb Williams does it to him. Actually, both of us had Green Bay not making it, so that's on theme for this so far. Cam said that he didn't think one of the two, Houston or Green Bay, would pan out. I actually have both of them not panning out. Both of them missed the playoffs for me.
I tried really hard to knock Dallas out, but it just couldn't. They didn't play. They don't play each other this year, which is strange because I feel like they've been playing every year.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just came down to division record, and Dallas there's 2 teams that finished in the top 5 of the worst teams in the NFL last year. Green Bay, their worst team was 7-10 last year.
Yeah.
So that's just the luck of the draw for them. And so Green Bay loses the final week of the season to get knocked out. Dallas loses back-to-back to end the season and manages to hang on because of a Sunday night game that goes in their favor.
Wow. So I'm going to do some math real quick over here because I think it's going to be interesting. We're going to do some sums because we have some sheets set up for us, and I want to see what the difference is between. Okay, yes, that is huge. So I wanted to see what your differences between conference wins was.
Okay.
Because I know it's massive considering the fact that you have
I had a lot of
3-14, 3-5, and 12s. You have, what's that, 23 more wins in the AFC.
And that's in spite of being pessimistic on the Browns, which we had a 4-game difference on.
Oh, that's me. Wait a second. I have 23 more wins. Hold on. What does Cam have? Let me go do yours. Holy crap. That's funny because I thought it was my bad. Yeah, I have 23 more wins in the NFC or in the AFC. And you have, let's do it, 272. We have the same amount. We're that much more pessimistic on the NFC. That it's 23 more wins for the AFC than the NFC. It's
interesting.
Nuts. Let me move on to the next. So I'm going to change the share over. We just got out of that other share. And then I'm going to share this new screen. Where are we? Let's see. Bam, kabam. We're going to start with Cam's records for the playoffs. So this is Cam's playoffs right here.
Yeah. So let's go with the AFC first. We'll just go all the way through the AFC, then we'll go all the way through the NFC, and then we'll talk about the Super Bowl. So Cincinnati versus Jacksonville, that'll be a really fun game between 2 quarterbacks that probably 2 of my favorite quarterbacks in the entire league. Cincinnati edges them out. I think that Jacksonville is a team that nobody wants to play come postseason, and so Cincinnati squeaks by. Houston gets a benefit of a Buffalo team. I think they've played a couple times in Josh Allen's career. Houston gets the win. Then the Jets and the Ravens is going to be a doozy of a game. Very slugfest-ish, a cold weather game. That'll probably be the prime time of all the wild card Well, actually, maybe not. We'll look at the NFC in a second. But Baltimore actually gets the win, sets up a rematch with Kansas City in the second round to not only avenge their loss in week 1, but loss in the AFC Championship game last year. Cincinnati, Houston. I think Cincinnati actually has a better time against Houston than they do against Jacksonville. I think that'll be a very interesting game. I think Houston, again, is going to be a very trendy pick to make their first ever franchise AFC Championship game. Not this year. And then Kansas City, they don't let Baltimore get revenge. They go to the AFC Championship game. And then we get a rematch for the third time in 4 years of Kansas City, Cincinnati in the AFC title game. And I cannot wait for that.
I'm here for it, for sure.
It's going to be so fun. I actually have Kansas City edging them out, but I really wanted to give Cincinnati the win there.
Okay. On the other side.
Going to the other side, actually, the most polarizing game, the biggest ratings, is going to be a third Philly-Dallas game, if that ends up being the way it does. Dallas, actually, this is going to be a poetic, just getting absolutely trounced. Last game
like
in Dak's career with Dallas and Mike McCarthy era. Everybody 1 year who's, there. It's going to end pretty ugly.
Interesting.
In my eyes.
Okay.
Another division.
Wow. Yeah,
game,
I didn't even notice that.
San Francisco and the Rams. Very tough one to call. I'd probably, whoever is the home team, I'll probably give it to. We end up giving San Francisco the nod in this one. And then Atlanta, Chicago. This sets up perfectly to, my bold prediction of Caleb Williams being the first overall pick quarterback to win a playoff game. It will happen if it's Atlanta. I'll say that much. And so if they get to the 5 seed somehow, that sets up perfectly because that's likely going to be the South representative. And we give Chicago the nod to set up a third division game versus Detroit in round 2. Philly-San Fran is going to be an absolute crazy game. San Francisco actually I think they have the edge in terms of like the mental. Philly typically kind of likes to talk shit. San Francisco has been one to actually get avenge losses last year. It was not close. That was actually the start of Philly's just collapse to end the season. That was right in the thick of that. I think Philly actually holds on. I like their roster more at this point, and I would trust, a Philly offense over a Brock Purdy-led offense in January, as crazy as that may seem.
All right.
Detroit and Chicago.
It's the time. I'm sorry.
This whole, when it gets to the playoffs, it gets really hard. But Detroit, I think, is just on a mission. I think Chicago getting to the playoffs basically is their Super Bowl in a sense. Right. We're like, what is a successful season for Chicago Bears? Go to playoffs, win a playoff game with a rookie quarterback and just a turnover of a roster that they have. And I think Detroit is just on a mission that's just like, we let one go last year. And that's what helps power them through them and also Philly. Getting Philly at home, I think, will be huge. Again, they're my favorite roster in football. So I'm going to give Detroit their first in 90 years ever. Obviously, Super Bowl has only been around 59 years. But this is going to be their first Super Bowl appearance.
I'm going to be honest. It's a little chalky.
It is a little
chalky. I was surprised. I was expecting something crazy.
It's chalky in the unchalkiest of ways.
Right.
Basically, it's chalky because I only have 2 upsets or 2 road teams winning the entire slate on both sides combined. Detroit to be the 1 seed to get to their first ever Super Bowl is a very out there prediction. Chicago winning a playoff game is very out there. And then Cincinnati being as high as they are, Jacksonville making the playoffs, those kinds of things will be interesting. And then it's a 1 versus 1 matchup in the Super Bowl. And I'm going to give Kansas City, which, again, they are the Super Bowl favorites, but no team has ever three-peated in NFL history, and they will be the first to do so. So in chalky thing becomes unchalky in that sense. So Kansas City is my Super Bowl champion this season.
Well, I know that that's chalky. Kansas City. Because I have Kansas City winning it all. We'll start over here on the AFC side.
I was about to say, what changed?
A lot.
Yeah.
A lot.
At least in the early parts of things.
Yeah, so if you look at our side of the AFC side, Cincinnati wins, gets the bye. Kansas City beats Buffalo for another game. We're writing the script right here, okay? It's a fun script, okay? Buffalo and Kansas City play every year in the playoffs, so why not? Kansas City gets the best of them at home, and then the Jets play the Browns. This is where the Browns come to an end. I think the Jets are too good, and they actually have some offense rather than just a defense. So there you go. And then Jacksonville and the Ravens. This was actually, I think that's going to be a really good game.
Yes.
The 4-5 on that side is going to be really good, no matter who it is, I feel like. But Baltimore edges them out to get Cincinnati, an in division game in the next round. I think Cincinnati is just too good at home, just better than Baltimore. And that's just how that goes. Kansas City beats the Jets. I think there's just too much firepower. And we get the same exact. What's up? We get the same exact AFC Championship where Kansas City wins the game.
Gotcha.
So, and then going on to the next grouping. What happened? Is it good?
Spell check.
Oh, did I mess it up?
Detroit.
Sorry, Lions. But yeah, no. The next side over here, we got the Detroit Lions getting the 1 seed, and then the 2-7 is Chicago and Philly, and I have Chicago beating Philly. First big upset. I actually have 3 upsets in this side of the bracket. I have 3 away teams winning. The 3-6 is the 49ers and the Rams playing the in-division game. I have the Rams winning. I just have a feeling that the Rams are going to be really good this year, and I'm confident in Matthew Stafford in the playoffs. And then Dallas, whoever plays Atlanta in the first round, in my opinion, is going to get the dub. Dallas, by default, gets them, and so they actually are into the divisional round, which would be a really big thing for Dallas fans, I feel like, because they got through the first round. And then in the next round, you get a 5-6 matchup because none of the 2s and 3s, 4s won. So it's pretty crazy, actually, up there. I think the Rams are going to win. They get an easy path because they get Dallas, in my opinion. But if they got Atlanta, I think it's the same way.
I will say, and this is a Dallas fan trying to predict their demise.
Yeah, you have been all summer.
Obviously, I had them losing to Philly in the first round as a 7 seed. I think that is less devastating, whether it's close or not. That's less devastating than getting another home game in the divisional round
and losing.
And then losing
to the Rams.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Ironically enough. And the same result happens.
Yeah, exactly. They still go home sad and demise, like you said. Detroit beats the Chicago Bears. Their run comes to an end. I thought about Philly winning, of course, but I just feel like it's going to be that hype game where you're like, okay, it's time for someone to do it. I'm kind of on that same boat with you. Detroit then beats the Rams to go to the Super Bowl, and Kansas City does it again. Three-peat, first time to ever have 2 Super Bowl wins and then return the next year. We had this conversation before where they get back to the Super Bowl.
Even getting back there, nobody's ever done that. But
then they also win it.
To also win it.
So that's how we see it. I mean, we kind of had similar views on everything. So
right. Yeah, obviously with your first round, especially in the NFC side of the things, getting all 3 road teams winning, not shocking. Wouldn't be shocking at all. I think a lot of NFC teams are closer in my eyes than AFC teams. In terms of like tier breaks, everybody's kind of all in a similar boat. But yeah, a lot of good stuff. Same Super Bowl matchups, same result. And again, gotta reiterate, we did this separately without influence. We're just great minds think alike in this regard, or great minds just completely botched.
Yeah, or we suck.
Right,
completely suck at this. So But yeah, let me stop sharing the screen and we'll get out of here. There we go. Cool. Thank you all for coming and hanging out with us, watching through. I'm sure this is an awesome video. I love shooting this video. I can't wait even for next year. Like, it gets me excited to do this because we do this separately. We completely do this game by game, and it came out to where we kind of felt very similar. I think we see these teams, a lot of along those same lines, talent wise, coaching wise, division wise, and all that stuff. So I was excited.
Yeah, we appreciate you guys tuning in. Please like, comment, subscribe if you haven't done so already. That goes a long way for our first ever NFL season that we will be covering. We are 1 week away, and we cannot be more excited for it. We have a big old friend draft tonight. Today's going to be a fantastic day. I want to hear what your guys' predictions are. Call us out if you think we're wrong, and then we'll call you out when we're right.
Yeah, I'll
January,
screenshot
or give you kudos for calling us out. But again, who's your Super Bowl pick? Who is some of the dark horses that you think could contend? Who are your worst records? All that stuff, tiebreakers. I want to know what it is. We also have a bowl predictions video that we just came out with. We need more comments on that. We need to be bold. This is a fun community that we're trying to be different and talk.
Yeah, let's build it.
And then one thing I also want to reiterate, all the socials that we'll be covering and doing, we're going to be going ham in the Discord this NFL season. But we really are starting to ramp it up right now. We want you guys to get in there. I know we got about 119 subs on YouTube, but we only got about 15 in our Discord. So we want everybody that hasn't already joined there. Let's talk some DFS. Let's talk some predictions, spreads, all that stuff. Dusty, our fellow GTD guy, has been off to a very hot start in college football.
3-0 on spreads.
Yeah, we want all of that. We want participation, community. Let's keep on growing it, and let's have a great first NFL season together.
Absolutely. Like Cam said, get in that Discord and hang out. We've been going through all kinds of different things. Of course, we had best ball going on. We have the spreads, of course, but there's even more. We have a general chat. Ask anything. We're here to talk. We're here to communicate, and we appreciate y'all for coming along for the ride. So we'll see.